are the Lit Ladies.
I'm Christy.
I'm Kelly.
And I'm Carissa.
Three writers and moms exploring how to live out our faith in our literary lives.
We span the country from the coast to the Midwest, and with different stages of life, careers, and favorite genres, we're sure to cover the literary landscape.
In every episode, we'll discuss books we love, reading life, and writing craft, using the Bible as our guide for beauty, goodness, and truth. New episodes drop every other Friday.
Hello and welcome back to the Lit Ladies. Once again, we are so glad to have you join us as we take this discussion into a topic we have not talked about yet. We are talking about sad reads today. And before you quickly jump in with an opinion in your mind on whether you like or hate sad reads, our hope with this episode is to get readers to think and analyze why they read the books they do or why they may not read the books they do. So we are going to go ahead and start off with the low-hanging fruit question. Do we read sad books or do we only like happily ever afters? Christy, what about you?
Sometimes I will read sad books. I read Jojo Moyes' Me Before You from a friend's recommendation, but I had no idea what I was getting into. This is pre-movie, just the book was out. Literally sobbed, and then her and I both went to the movie together. We ugly cried in public, which was great because I don't ever cry in public if I can help it. So it was nice to do that with a friend. I would say in general, though, I usually avoid emotionally heavy books. But sometimes books advertised as rom-coms or like happily ever afters. I mean, they still deal with like heavy topics. Catherine Sinner is one of my all-time favorite authors. And she's someone who can literally have me laughing and crying on the same page. Because her books are rom-com-y, but they also deal with heavy topics. I love everything she's written. But their banter and the wittiness, like the things that happen in between, the stuff is really good.
She adds things like losing eyesight and coming to grips with that.
Yeah.
Various health issues. Yep.
Oh, wow.
Stopping your life for like a family member's sickness and what that means. Yeah. She is good at that. Her plots are good. What about you, Carissa?
I just put one of her books on hold at the library.
Which one?
The new one, Rom-Comers.
Okay.
That was the
Have
last
you read
one.
I haven't read anything by her. Well, it's interesting you say that because like by the cover, it looks like very lighthearted and it's like very bright colors and so
and that's what's funny because they are rom-com-y, so they are like those bright cartoonish covers, but then at the same time like there are more like real life issues that are kind of dealt with. The Things We Save in a Fire, phenomenal. That was a great book.
Good.
Oh,
Yep.
I think I've heard of that title.
Yeah, that one was really good too. All of her, like I said, I've loved all of her books.
That kind of reminds me of like the only romantic like contemporary romance that I've read recently, and I think I mentioned it before, is Flatshare. So I don't know if it'd be considered a rom-com because it just felt so, it had like this serious undertone, like a very emotional core of like dealing with your past and dealing with past trauma, like borderline abuse, not to like give a spoiler, but like, that's kind of like what she's dealing with. Like it's very heavy, but at the same time it has that fun, it has a happy ending and it's a romance and it's funny, but that's satisfying to me. I think to have like the sad, but also there's at least a hopeful ending to it. Yeah, but I think in thinking about this episode, to answer your question, do I read sad books, as I thought, I don't really read that many sad books, and then I was like, oh yeah, I guess I do.
Yeah. Well, so I think you start getting into a bunch of nuances. So I have heard people say romance books have a happily ever after. That means the couple's going to be together at the end. They're happy.
Yeah.
I think you can have books like Nicholas Sparks books that have romance in them, but the ending may not be a happily ever after. Like, think of the movie A Walk to Remember.
But I'm like, what would we classify him as? Like, I've always thought of him as being romance, but now that you mentioned that, I'm like, some of his books have really crappy endings. Like, you don't end up happy.
I think
Is it just like a tragic romance?
Yeah, romance can be tragic.
I think it just depends on who you're talking to, because if you get on like Bookstagram, some romance authors will be like, Nicholas Sparks is not a romance author. A romance book has to have a happily ever after. So it depends on, it depends on who you're talking to. But I think there is, Carissa, because you mentioned Flatshare, there's a difference between rom-com and romance. Because rom-com's going to be a little happier and more upbeat. Romance might have the deeper threads that pull at the heartstrings to get that happily ever after. So I think the interesting thing about sad books is I don't typically seek out sad books, but sometimes I'll start a book for whatever reason and realize it's sad. You know, like someone will recommend it, or I read a historical fiction book and all of a sudden a character dies or something I didn't see happening happens and I'm crying and I realize, oh, this is a sad book. So
like you didn't seek it out. It just is in there.
Right.
Like, I think every book has conflict and has some element of something sad, you know, to some degree.
I read, I don't think it was a clean book. I read it a while ago, so caveat there. But I read a Rebecca Yarros book. She's the one who wrote Fourth Wing, but it was like a contemporary book. And it was so sad. I was crying, like sobbing, but I won't tell you which one. It just had a child involved. And so that's like a pull the heartstrings for me. Like I can't handle that one. So
I think it depends on where you are in life too. Like I think he mentioned that. Yeah. Or someone mentioned it sometime.
Yeah, I don't elaborate on that thought though.
Oh, like just where you are in life. Well, I think also I'm very like romantic in thinking that certain books to come to you at certain times and like right when you need them. And it just depends on where you are at in life and like what you've gone through, and or like reading a book earlier in life and then reading it later in life might hit you differently.
It's like Disney movies. When you were a kid, it was fine. You know, whatever. And then you watch them as an adult with your kids and you're sobbing. Your kid's like, why are you crying?
And you're like
Toy
relating
Story,
to the
saying
parent.
goodbye to the toys. Like, I'm like, that is so sad growing up. It's terrible. You know, but it's like, when I was a kid, I'm like, oh, cool movie. You know, and it's the same thing they always say about Little Mermaid. When you were little, you're like, yeah, give it to your dad. But then as a parent, you're like, you know what? She should not have been lusting after Eric. She was 16, you know, whatever. So it's like her dad was right. So it's just those different. I think there was one, too, about Miss Doubtfire. When they're just like, you know, when you watch the movie, you're like, oh, her dad's amazing. He brought a pony in the house for her birthday. But as a mom, you're like, oh my gosh, why would there be a pony in the house? Like, I would never allow that. So it's absolutely where you are in life.
My daughter has these little picture books that are retellings of classics, and one of them is Anne of Green Gables. Like, it just gives you the high points, but it's very sweet. It's got these quotations from the story. And at the last one, it's one of the last parts of the book where she's like, you know, I thought the road ahead of me was straight, but now I see that there's a bend in it. But, like, I believe that the world... like, life has the best for me, and I'm going to continue to believe that it does. Like, I'm really getting emotional saying the quote, but every time I read it to my daughter, she goes, Mommy, cry. Mommy, cry. Because I'm, like, tearing up as I'm, like, reading this quote. Like, wow, this just hits different. When you've been through more life, you can say that you've been through that. Yeah.
Did you ever read The Littlest Angel?
No.
My Sunday school teacher gave it to me when I was a kid. It's like a picture book, whatever, Littlest Angel. And basically it's about Jesus is getting ready to be born, and all the angels are trying to find gifts. So the littlest angel in heaven is like trying to find a gift, and he finds a box from, like, I guess his childhood. I mean, I know we can't bring things to heaven, but you know, it's a book. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, it's a kid, you're like, oh, that's so cool. He's giving him like his dog collar, you know, whatever, this cool box of like childhood things. But as an adult reading to my kid, I'm like, it's a child who died. Like, he's an angel. Like, it just totally hits different, you know? And you're just like, these are all the earthly things that he's missing. Oh, it was horrible. I still have the book. But I'm like, we're not reading that anymore.
Did you read the children's book Love You Forever? It's like the one where...
Love you forever, like you for always.
Like you for always.
Oh,
as long
yes.
as I'm living, my baby you'll be. That one gets me every time because every time all the phases of the kids until the kid is grown up and the mom is old. It's like, it really pulls at those heartstrings. And wait for children's books to do this to us. So
yeah, right.
I know, right?
But I do like that thought, Carissa, about time in life. And I think some people will call those trigger warnings. Like, you know, let's say you had a parent die of cancer recently. Well, if you're reading a book where a parent dies of cancer, it's probably going to be a very difficult read for you. Whereas if you haven't had that happen, or, you know, you're 30 years past that, it may not resonate in the same way. So I think there's a lot to be said about stage of life and what content we take in. Do you think there's a benefit to reading something sad?
So I think sometimes maybe when we are talking about sad books, we're really talking about realist books or realism. But I don't know what you guys think about that. Like, how would you define realist?
Tell us more. What would you say?
Well, I think there's just different ways to look at it. I mean, I think some people would think a realist fiction would be just kind of like, well, it's just portraying life the way it is, like just kind of reporting. But at the same time, we all have our own perspective. Every person, like every artist. So Robert Frost has a really great quote about realism. He says, there are two types of realist. There is the one who offers a good deal of dirt with his potato to show that it is a real one, and the other who is satisfied with the potato brushed clean. I'm inclined to be the second kind. To me, the thing that art does for life is to clean it, to strip it to form. So I think, there's probably a lot of different ways to look at that quote, and I have my students discuss it when we're talking about Robert Frost. But I think what it's saying personally is that you don't have to simply like report life. Like I think Hemingway probably would say that he does, or did. You don't have to show like the most gritty and like awful things just for the sake of like saying, I'm reporting life, I think it's going to naturally have that author or that artist's kind of spin on it. And Frost is saying like, it's art's job to help us see life in a different way. So he's going to like give you the potato, but he's going to give it to you all clean, and not that it doesn't have sad things. Not that it's not still a potato, but it's like, it helps you see the potato for what it is, maybe.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think that is definitely a topic that people are going to differ on completely. Because I think some people would say that they purposely write a book for the escape to provide that happily ever after that creates life, that happily ever after for their readers. And as a reader, I often choose that escape. But I think others would say without the dirt on the potato, you don't get to the end result. Like without the struggle, you don't see the success.
Well, I think so. He's saying he considers himself the second kind, which is interesting because all his poetry, like it's really beautiful, but it's really sad. Like Snowy Woods, it's just like in my mind because I just taught it. It's like in the woods on a snowy evening, something like that, or stopping by the woods on a snowy evening. It's got that famous line, "I have miles to go before I sleep." If you've heard of that, yeah. So, but if you really look at it, the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. And I mean, a lot of people think it's like looking at death, like the call of death, and like choosing to go on. I think it's his son who died by suicide. Like, so when you think about it that way, like on the surface, the words are very lovely, but it is really sad. So I think he, did portray realism. I don't know. Right.
And it would be interesting to think about what art looks like then as opposed to now, and what, what would he think if he were to look at our genre fiction now? Would he say, oh, this is ridiculous, this isn't even closely resembling life? Or would he say, that's great, that's a clean potato? We'll never know, but it's kind of interesting. I was talking to a friend yesterday about this topic, and she told me, she's actually a new reader. She said that when she first started reading, like she wasn't in a good place, so she didn't want to read happy books because she felt like life just isn't that way. Why read a happy book if life's not that way? And so she liked reading the sad books. So it was an interesting take on it.
It makes sense though, because I have a friend who got separated, divorced, and we read a lot, and I'd be like, oh, not this one, and she was like, you know what? It's gonna be a while for I'm in the mood for romance. Like, give me murder, give me suspense, thrillers, historical, like whatever. But like she was like, I don't really want to read romance for a while. So it is about the seasons of life that you're in.
Sure,
so I can understand that.
Yeah, I can imagine if you go through a really difficult relationship issue, the last thing you want to do is read a very sterilized, happy, potentially imperfect story about a marriage.
Yeah.
What about negative emotions? When we talked about horror, we talked about the idea of catharsis. That was an idea that Carissa discussed in a Substack she wrote. Do you think that same idea can apply to sad books. And maybe, Krista, can you explain the idea of catharsis in case someone missed it?
Oh, so that's Aristotle's idea of the perfect tragedy, actually, which kind of fits. Really what he was talking about was sadness. Was that it gives you these feelings of pity and fear, but because you are watching someone else, a character, go through it, it kind of cleanses you of those emotions for yourself. And that was kind of his idea of the perfect tragedy. So it's like that feeling when you like cry and you just get it all out and then you feel better, that kind of thing.
And using art to do that.
Yeah, but using art.
Yeah. What do you think, Christy?
I'm a crier. Gonna throw that out there as an adult. As a child, teen, young adult, I never cried. Had zero emotions. I don't know if this is just making up for all of that. But I will say, if I'm crying, I can be like, it's because of this book. It's not because I'm sad about life. Because I really hate crying in front of other people. Like, I'm not a pretty crier. I don't know if anybody is. But I mean, I cry at everything, like Olympic commercials, Super Bowl commercials, like anything. It's so funny because I'll watch movies with my husband and daughter, and they are the exact same. They are just like stoic, like no emotions, and like something on screen is happening, and I'm just like, and they're like, "Are you crying?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm crying. Leave me alone. Let me have my
really
emotions."
Surprises me.
I know I don't come across as like a sensitive person at all, but certain things trigger me.
Not that I wasn't saying that. You just seem funny, like sarcastic.
I deflect everything with humor, so any emotions I have, my humor comes out, my sarcasm comes out to deflect. It's the way I was raised. We never discuss anything.
Oh yeah, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, no.
My this is a side note, but I was out with two of my girlfriends the other night, and we were talking about someone else we know who's like genuinely so sweet and kind. And my friend goes, "Yeah, that person, she's just so sweet. She's so kind, just like this one over here." And she points to my other friend. I'm like, "Are you saying I'm not sweet and kind?" Like, thank you. And then she's like, "No, we're just a little." What did she say? We're sassier, spicier. I don't know what she said. Anyway, I was giving her a hard time about it. Yeah, so that's interesting. So, do you cry at real life things, though? Like, sometimes I'll cry more at books than I do real life.
I mean, it depends if it's real life that, like if it's close to me, real life, that affects me. Like a family member dying, something like that, or like a cousin or somebody I know going through a hard time and, like, we're talking about it, or just, like, life piling up. I mean, you know what? I don't discern. I just cry.
Yeah. I will say you have, over the years, because we Marco Polo a fair amount, there have been times you've said, "I'm going to email you because I can't get through this without crying." So that is interesting. Okay.
So you should take that as good, because otherwise I would just be humor and you would never know anything.
So you would say that fiction, if you read something that's sad, like, it does kind of help you feel those feelings and get them out in kind of a controlled way.
I feel like I need a good solid cry at least once a month. Like, otherwise, like, stuff builds up. Maybe not once a month. Maybe like once every 1 to 3 months. Because then just stuff builds up, and then once I cry, it's that catharsis. I'm like, whew, okay. Like, I'm done. I'm ready to just put my big girl panties on and deal with it. And so we move forward.
Okay. That's so interesting to me. Okay, Krista, what do you think on this topic?
Oh, catharsis?
Yeah, and sad book. Yeah, and like kind of sad.
Yeah, I think, I think it actually, like I said, it fits more with the definition of sadness, of tragedy, more so than even horror, just because that's the first definition of it. I think, through any story, we're kind of living vicariously in a way through the characters. Yeah, so I think I agree. Yeah. I don't have a complicated answer, really, but I think...
Yeah,
for me personally, I thought that I didn't cry that much at books, but I was able to think of a handful that we can talk about at the end, but it wasn't that many. Like, it wasn't... maybe one every couple years that makes me, like, actually cry.
Yeah, I'm probably the same in terms of frequency. One kind of notable thing that I was thinking about, oftentimes historical fiction books will make me cry, especially those books that are around World War II. I've read a good amount of them, and I think, well, one, the atrocities at that time were so much. It's just hard to process as it is. But when you get into like a historical fiction book and you identify with the characters and their whole journey, I think you almost experience this occurrence that occurred in real life, but from a fictional standpoint. And it does put you in their shoes in a different way than if you just read a history book. So I think sometimes when done well, authors can paint a vivid picture, a vivid scene. They can portray emotions, and those can be transferred to the reader. And I've certainly found that, again, in historical fiction books that are around tougher topics.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
We just connect to narrative as humans.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And we've talked about that before. Like, the Bible has parables. Stories work for us to learn and identify and empathize with those emotions that people would feel. So, okay, so see if this question makes sense. I kind of, on the romance topic, there's a lot of talk in the romance community about how a romance book has to have a happily ever after. And if it doesn't have a happily ever after, it's not a romance story. So do you think the inverse of that idea is that, I guess, literary fiction or other kind of non-genre fiction should have sad elements?
I think a lot of them do, just because, like Kristin was saying earlier about conflict. Yeah. Like, I mean, you can have your conflict where, you know, people just aren't getting along, you know, or like they both are after competing for like the same goal. So there's not really like sadness, I guess. But I was going to say, I'm reading Toni Shiloh's new book, The Nature of Love. And amid the love story, the main character has to deal with the loss of her sister. And then she's suddenly in this new role of caring for her sister's kids. It's all in the back cover blurb, so I'm not giving anything away. But it's a mix of love. Like, there's some humor, there's like tragedy and sadness. So like, I'm only like halfway through, maybe not quite halfway. So it's like, but when she was going through all that, like getting the news and everything, I mean, I was tearing up, and I don't even have a sister. God help me if my brothers pass on and leave me their kids, because I'll go insane. You know, but so it's like, I don't really have like any kind of relation or relativeness, I guess, with that. But like, it still made me teary, like just the way, you know, it was written well. So, I mean, I think a lot of fiction does contain, but maybe some fiction dwells on it more than others.
Yeah, and some fiction doesn't have a happy ending, right? Some fiction ends on a sad note. But some people do. Those. Some people like them. Yeah, I know. I do too.
So I don't like the ambiguous endings.
Are you asking? You don't like the ambiguous endings?
No, because you recommended one to me recently, if I may point this out.
What
and it's so funny because then, what do I want to say it?
Well, it's okay. I mean, yeah, ambiguous ending. That's kind of vague. That's fine. What book was it?
All Good People Here.
Well, no, I did warn you about that.
You didn't really warn me about that, I don't think. You just said you might not like the ending, which isn't really a warning.
I mean, it's kind of a warning.
Actually, that ending made me really mad, but also it's still a good book. So if you like a good mystery,
it is still a good book. And it's funny because I recommended it to another friend, and she was like, "What?" at the end, and I was like, "Don't worry, here's how it ended." And so like I wrote up my own ending. I was like, "I'm a writer. I can write my own ending." And so then it was the HEA. So I'm like, "Bam, done."
Kelly, are you asking? I don't know. I forgot.
I am asking if there should be books that have sad endings. If that should be a hallmark of certain
like
types
literary fiction. Has
yes,
to be sad. I don't think literary fiction necessarily has to be, but I think a lot of times it tends to be more realist. Like I think a lot of literary fiction just falls into like the realistic sort of contemporary space. And I think that just ends up being sad. But I think there's an article that you shared that I think makes a really good point. Is that it's not necessarily true. Like there's a lot of crossover, and a lot of literary fiction can be in any genre space and still be literary. It doesn't necessarily have to be sad. It just more often is. I don't really know why. Like because it's trying to be realistic. I don't know.
I feel like with literary, the main purpose is kind of like wrapped up, But like in Happily Ever After books, like I feel like every single subplot, every single person gets their like neat little bow on top. So I feel like with literary fiction, the ones that I think I read, I feel like the main point is kind of like a satisfying ending, but everyone doesn't get like their own big red bow.
Yes.
So it's satisfying yet more realistic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which I think probably some people like that, you know?
I think it's more
I do
realistic.
too.
Like I get annoyed when I read I love my Happily Ever Afters, don't get me wrong, but I do get annoyed when it's like the main story is wrapped and then they're like, oh, but this side character ended up falling in love with him, and then this one happened to, and I'm like, okay, that's too much Happily Ever After. Like, just give me one. Like, that's all I need. Yeah, I know.
Well, and it can be
kind of like a Pride and Prejudice. They have a double wedding at the end.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
It can be hard as a writer. Sometimes I'll try and write shorter books, and you're supposed to have a happily ever after, but it is kind of like, really, like, how are these two characters going to fall in love in the span of a week and commit to forever convincingly, right? Because that doesn't happen in real life.
Hey, we had some people respond to the love at first sight, so it does apparently happen.
It does happen. I know, that's true. So yeah, let's talk about literary fiction a little more. Would you both agree that when you see like the book club picks and the, I don't know, Good Housekeeping books of the month, those types of things, would those typically be literary fiction?
I think it's the upmarket.
Yeah, I think it's what you're talking about is upmarket. That's kind of like, it has like a literary bent, and they might have more serious topics that might not necessarily be happily ever after. Might be historical or something, but they still have a strong genre element to them.
Okay.
I think.
Make that distinguishment a little more. So
I feel like I used to read more of that, and I don't read as much anymore, so I'm not sure that I can define it super well, but
okay.
It's kind of like between, people wouldn't say, when they say book club, I think they mean upmarket, which is I think like the publishing term for it. So it's like literary, but at the same time, it's also kind of like genre together.
I think it's deeper than like your beach reads, but it's not so deep that it's like Carissa level. Like it's not like your classics.
Sad.
It's like people like me can like read it and we don't feel dumb. So it's like it's like a good mix of the two.
I think they follow more of like a plot as opposed to sometimes literary fiction can be a little like slow, meandering. Like it's focused on character. Like maybe not a lot is even happening in the book, which
like a slice of life, a day in the life. Yeah,
sure. And literary fiction would be very prose oriented, right? You're going to have a lot of prose, a lot of descriptors. Yeah, that makes sense.
A lot of emphasis on style, which I love books with style, but I think if that's all that's in the, she says, she
Carissa likes her words.
Ink heart.
She likes a lot of words.
But if that's all that's recommending the book, then it's kind of like, it's hard for me to like it. Like I was thinking of two that I tried to read maybe within the last couple years, but they were like narrative nonfiction, so I don't know if it really applies, but they're considered literary, okay? Like they were beautifully written, but I was like, I cannot keep reading these. This book is about nothing. It's like, I'm just complaining about my life, which is really not that bad to begin with, but I'm making it sound really bad, and I'm just contemplating things, and it sounds really pretty, but I was like, this is so boring. I cannot read this.
Yeah, you want to see some sort of hero growth. Like, you want to see a character journey of some sort. Yeah.
Navel-gazy, I feel like that, like, it's like you're just, like, it's like self-reflective, but like not in a good way.
What is navel-gazy?
I know, navel-gazy. She put that in the document, and I was like, it makes me think someone's looking at a belly button. And
yes, that's exactly what it is. I'm just
kind
of like, it's too like focused on one thing, and I don't know, like self-centered. I don't know, but books like that bother me.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. Totally fair. I did want to read a quote from this article on Writer's Digest I found, and just because I think it explains it well, and I'll link it in the show notes. It says, one of the through lines for genre fiction is the presence of tropes and structures that are required for them to be considered whatever genre they are. We know a couple will end up together at the end of a romance novel. We know the mystery will be solved by the end of a mystery novel. The same is not necessarily true for literary fiction. You can't really expect anything in particular before going into it, which means there's an inherent risk in both choosing to read it and write it. Readers can't be guaranteed some version of a known ending. Writers have the difficult task of writing without a previously built upon format. So I love that idea because it's a risk. And I think that's sometimes an interesting idea when you choose a book, but you are investing time and sometimes money into your reading experience, not to mention the emotions. So kind of interesting to pick up a book and not know how it's going to end and not have that subtle promise.
And see, I rarely pick up a book just like willy-nilly. Like usually someone has had to tell me like, hey, you should read this book. Like I said, I have my friend in Boston. We have very similar tastes. So she's like, you need to read this. I'm like, on the list. Chris's hit or miss. Sometimes I'll put up my list and sometimes I'm like, that sounds way too artsy. I'm not going to like it. But see, the problem is I'll go and check out at my library and right behind me, they have like shelves of kind of like new reads. So sometimes I will see a catchy title or a catchy cover and I'll like be like, you know what? I will give this one a shot. Sometimes it does pay off. Sometimes it doesn't.
But you'll only make that kind of uninformed decision based on the cover if it looks kind of like beachy.
Yeah, so you better have a nice cover. Not even beachy. Like sometimes they'll be really creepy looking, like mysterious, like whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think the nice thing about tropes is like they kind of have a bad rap sometimes, but for being like too repetitive or overused. But I mean, that's what sells books.
That's the point.
I mean, like you know what to expect, and so.
Yeah, and readers pick it up.
I was going to say, if there's a dog on the cover, not going to read it. Because 9 out of 10 times, the dog's going to die. And I'm like, forget it. I will never pick up a dog book unless someone has read it before me and can guarantee that the dog makes it. I don't care about the people. Whatever. I need the dog to make it.
You guys had some thoughts on some upmarket books you've read. I think you, Kristin, maybe talked a little bit about Courtney Walsh.
Yes. The Happy Life of Isadora Bentley. And I've mentioned that before. Love this, but it goes back to, and she always talks about Instagram, how she writes, you know, her happy books, like that's what she wants to write. But at certain parts of that book, like it really resonated with me and like I would cry because of things that like are ongoing in my life. You know, they just hit differently. Had I read this book in my 20s when I didn't have those kind of worries, like I would have been like, oh, this is a totally happy book. Was it still satisfying? 100%. But it's just one of those things like we talked about. Like, it's just the seasons of life. So.
Yeah. And would you think she's upmarket then?
I don't know if she'd be upmarket. She's more than a beach read. Like, she's definitely deeper than that. Is it just considered commercial fiction or romance? Because like you said, it's not a rom-com. I mean, there are definitely some funny parts in it, though. So I was definitely giggling while reading it. But maybe it would just be like the romance that has the light elements and the deeper elements.
Yep. Yeah, or even women's fiction, kind of a broad generality with a romance.
I think women's fiction can be, I can't say that I read a lot of it, but I feel like it's more this kind of upmarket, can be sad.
Yes.
You know, could have romance, might not. Just be like women-centered, you know.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. More like a woman's life instead of the sole story of like a romance or a mystery. Anyway, sorry. Side note, why does it have to be called women's fiction? Like, why can't it just be a book? I don't know. Like, there's no men's fiction section up here.
There's this James Bond.
It's like, because it's all.
But I wouldn't say that's true either. I wouldn't say all the rest of literature is not men's fiction because there's other genres too that's just for everybody. But anyways, that's kind of funny.
Some marketer somewhere
just occurred to me, women's fiction.
Yep.
A way to categorize it, I guess.
So one of you was asking about Liane Moriarty.
Oh, yeah. So would she be considered upmarket? I think I've just read one, and I've been trying to think of the name of it.
I read The Husband's Secret, and then I read the one that was the Nicole Kidman.
Big Little Lies.
That one, but she also has another one, the Nine
Perfect Strangers.
7. Yeah, it's something like that. Mm-hmm. That one's okay. I definitely watched the TV show, which was actually somewhat like the book. But
is that the one where at the family wedding? Is that the one wedding where? Okay.
No, this one is a group of 4 women that are friends.
I haven't
with
read
their husbands.
No,
this is the
which one are we talking about?
The Big Little Lies or whatever.
That one I've read, Big Little Lies.
Yeah,
and
so that was the TV that was Reese Witherspoon, Nicole Kidman,
Shailene Woodley.
I know The girl from
her.
Whatever.
Yeah.
The fantasy movie. I'm like, whatever. That's how I like relate people. It's like
She's
the
a
7
Divergent.
degrees of
Shailene
Kevin
Woodley.
Bacon.
Yeah.
Go through and be like, this person was in this
Big,
movie.
yeah, so that's Big Little Lies.
Yeah, The Husband's Secret is also really good. You should read that one. There's only been one book of hers, and I can't remember the name of it, that I didn't like. But everything else, I pretty much have liked.
But I was surprised by it. Like, I kind of took a chance. I think I listened to it on audio, and I get a lot of audio through my library. So I'm more likely to, like, take a chance on a book because I'm not buying it. But I was surprised because it, like, there's like a murder mystery at the center of it that it, like, it kind of comes back to at the end. And so you're just kind of, like, wondering about it the whole time, but then there's just like all these funny things happening, and then did I give a spoiler? I don't really remember.
I don't think you did.
Okay, yeah,
It's a TV show and it's been out, so you're fine.
It's like in the first scene that you're like, someone's been murdered, or we don't know who.
But
then
there's a couple TV shows that I feel like do that. They'll have like 1 week after or 1 week prior, and they'll show like a dead body or whatever, but you can't really see much about it, and then like they'll go to like, and the next scene is like 1 week earlier, and then the whole so you're like,
which is kind
who
of,
dies, and then you're
it's kind of such a trope at this point, overused structure, but
It is. I agree.
it still works.
I watched that show, and I did spend the whole show with my husband trying to figure out who the culprit was, and I was not right at the end. So,
well, see, I love that though. Whenever you're like, it could be this one because of this, but wait, it could also be her because of this that happened, and it's like all these different stories, and then at the end you're like, oh,
yeah, it was a good twist I didn't see coming.
Yeah, it deals with some serious stuff, like I think just about motherhood, and from what I remember.
But I would consider that probably upmarket because it's definitely
I became a mom,
deeper.
too. Yeah, I think I read it before.
Versus
Become a mom, things
yeah.
change.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to read it again, for sure.
Yeah. Once you become a mom, things change. I agree. So, who read Ann Patchett?
Oh, that was me. I would consider her literary for sure. She's definitely a realist.
Okay.
So her books do not ever end happily. And it's always like, what? That happened? Are you kidding me? But like, I cannot stop reading. She's so good. Here, I even have this beautiful new cover of this one I read last year. She came to my town, and so I got to meet her in person. Oh my gosh, she was amazing, and she actually signed it, I think. Let's see. Oh, well,
That's like a big note.
Writing is to Carissa. Writing is a beautiful life, and you love it. Because I asked her about writing. How do you like stay in love with it? And she's like, you're never gonna stop because you love it, and you'll just keep writing. Like if you really love it, you'll just keep going. I was like, you're so right, Anne. No, but it's
so good.
She just writes so beautifully, and the characters feel real, and it's not like so prosy. Like I think you might enjoy the style, Christy, because it's not so descriptive.
We'll see.
It doesn't
you
like
know
get
what? I'll
tripped
read
up
like
in
one
itself.
sad book a year. Don't blow it. Pick a good one.
Tripped over the words. It's just you're just like immersed in the story.
Okay, so I have a question with her books. Are you satisfied with the ending? Because sometimes endings can be sad, but you're satisfied.
I'm not. Like, I'm not.
Now I'm definitely not reading her.
But I'm not ever going to stop reading her books, honestly. Like,
so what is it that you like so much?
Satisfying. I think it's just the characters just feel so real.
Okay.
And I'm just like immersed. I'm invested. And her style, like I said, it's like one of those styles it feels effortless, so effortless that you know it's not effortless. Like
right.
It's like not overly descriptive, so you know that she spent time whittling down the right words to yeah.
Which is just
Bel
admirable.
Canto is really good. Bel Canto. I know she's had a couple that I've missed that have been possibly award winning that I need to go back and read, like The Commonwealth.
Okay, you said you gravitate towards her because of the characters and the writing. Those are your reasons.
Yeah.
Okay. That's so interesting.
And I kind of know that I know that the ending's going to be not what I like. Well, there's also kind of a twist, and it's also like, what? Like, I did not see that coming, but I expect that. So, also Patron Saint of Liars. That might be my favorite one. I don't know.
Is that by her?
A question though.
Mm-hmm.
When you read
that's
these
one
books,
of her first ones.
my question is: when you read these books, are you ever hopeful that it'll have a different ending?
A little bit. Maybe she'll bring it around this time.
I'm like, every time I watch King Kong, I'm like, maybe he lives in this one. Maybe the Titanic doesn't sink this time. Literally every time it happens. So I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can read books like that.
Do you have any books that still hit hard that you've both read, all this time later? Or throughout the years, whenever?
I talked about one on an earlier podcast. It was Stars in the Grass by Anne-Marie Stewart. And it's about the main character's younger brother. He dies in this incident. And the story is primarily told from her point of view. And she's 9. So it's like a super unique perspective. And it has just stuck with me. I read it once. I would never read it again because I really read it on vacation and was like sobbing at the hotel. My husband's like, "Are you okay?" Like, no, it's this book. But I won't even get into like the childhood movies, like Fox and Hound, All Dogs Go to Heaven, My Girl. Like, are any of those familiar to you?
Yes.
Probably not Carissa.
I will watch
like
Bambi.
Fox and the Hound.
Oh, 100% no Bambi.
Bridge to Terabithia, I've read the book.
Oh my gosh, it was terrible. Terrible.
I can barely remember it for some reason.
Do you not remember what happens?
It's a classic. No.
Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like I can spoil this because it's like been out for 45 years probably. No, it's like her and this boy are like best friends and they have this bridge to Terabithia, which is like their imaginary place.
Yeah.
And then one day she wants him to go with her, but I forget if he goes on a field trip or he does something so he doesn't go. And the bridge breaks or the rope swing or whatever breaks and she drowns. So then it's like, they were best friends. I mean, it's terrible. Like, what did they do to us when we were children? Charlotte's Web? I don't even like spiders. And I cried about Charlotte. I mean,
Isn't Tuck Everlasting pretty sad, too?
Oh, I remember that one. Yeah. I don't remember how it ended, though.
Yeah. I don't know how I grew up without therapy. Yeah. There were a lot of sad things.
You had books. It was cathartic.
It wasn't. It did not feel cathartic when I was a kid. I was looking back at my books now, but I'm just like, man.
You had the stories. What about you, Carissa? Anything stand out to you?
Okay, so one, I have to say I have not finished it, but I am going to finish it because I just told my friend that I would start it over and read it with her, and that is A Little Life. So I stopped in the middle because it got too sad.
Big book.
Oh, I know. It's pretty thick. I just needed a break. I was like, this is so immersive and I love the characters and I just can't stop reading it. But I was like, oh man, I can see. Okay, so one criticism I've heard of this book is, it sounds bad, but people call it torture porn. And I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, oh, it's just so sad. And so I'm reading it and I'm like, I got to the middle, I was like, yeah, I can see why people say it's just so sad. It's just like sad things keep happening. And you're like, would this really happen in real life? Like this many sad things? I was like, let me just take a break. And then I didn't go back, but I want to. But now I don't remember everything that happened. So I feel like I need to start over. But really beautiful writing. And I definitely came close to tears a couple times. So here's my public declaration. Really quick. Yeah,
do you anticipate a happy or a sad ending with that one?
Oh, I'm guessing if you look at this cover, I'm going to think sad.
I mean, he looks like he's in pain.
It's
so
like
I would not go with a happy ending.
Crying. Or ambiguous. Or like bittersweet, maybe.
What?
You never know.
Good luck.
Another one, I think within the past couple years, I definitely like. The last book I can remember for sure, real crying, like not just tearing up, but like actually bawling, was Looking for Alaska by John Green. Young
You
adult.
mentioned that recently.
Yeah, I think it was with Manic Pixie Dream Girl. Because he kind of does the Manic Pixie Dream Girl, but like does it well. And I don't want to like spoil any more of the book.
I read The Fault in Our Stars.
Oh man, Fault in Our Stars also, I put that on there as a sad book I've read, but Looking for Alaska definitely, I think I liked it better, and I think it is even sadder, but
but still good.
Oh man, it's so good.
So one that stands out to me, I don't remember if I mentioned it earlier, but The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah. That one, it was moving. It was so moving. You get into the whole story and you just see different points of view. Again, historical fiction, but it was so good. And okay, this is a random one. I'm not even going to say it was sad, and this is the only Stephen King book I've read. I read 11/22/63.
Oh.
You told me to read
Which,
that one, yeah.
I don't know, it's kind of fantasy, it's kind of historical fiction. Yeah, it's about a guy who finds like a time portal and goes back into the 60s and then lives his life trying to save JFK on his election execution. But the ending was satisfying but sad, and it just left me with that kind of like melancholy feeling, because it wasn't exactly the happily ever after I wanted, but it was like well done. So that one sits with me too. Kristin, did you have any more you wanted to bring up?
Let's see. All the Yellow Posies. I think I talked about this one during a recent podcast. And I put it as one of my top books of the year. But that's actually an indie book, which, you know, you just never know what to expect sometimes. I didn't know anything about the author. I just took a chance. I was like, I like that this is set in the past and the cover's pretty. But it's set in the 1920s. It's a romance. Well, I guess maybe not according to some definitions of romance, but it's got a romantic plot. And the guy the love interest has just fought in World War I. So he has shell shock, which is what we call today PTSD. And so it's just him struggling with that, throughout their romance. But wow, yeah, tears came to my eyes. I turned to my husband, I was like, I think this book is going to make me cry. What is happening right now? I did not expect this at all.
What is this wet stuff?
Yeah, but it has a hopeful ending. I will say, it has a hopeful ending. But I kind of went in knowing I felt like it was going to be sad. Like I felt like I knew what was going to happen, and I was okay with that.
Yeah. So yeah. I have one more point I would say I've heard on this topic, just reading in general, but I think it applies in this specific topic. Reading can often give us empathy for people. And I think sometimes maybe we read a story about someone who's going through something we haven't experienced. Like, for example, loss of a child. I've never lost, one of my children. But as I read a book where someone who has lost a child, I see and feel these emotions so strongly. I think it does give me more empathy for someone who actually maybe would go through a similar situation in their own life. And I think that can happen with a variety of topics that we might read about. So I definitely think, as I was thinking through this episode and benefits of reading, sad books or different genres, I think there's a huge value to reading for empathy and experiencing life through a different lens. And it's a good reminder to not always just stick to what we know, because sometimes our horizons may be broadened by branching out.
That's a very good point.
I agree. Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for joining us today on our literary journey. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Lit Ladies Pod and rate and review on your podcast platform. Today, we have a poem from Robert Frost, Two Tramps in Mud Time. The sun was warm, but the wind was chill. You know how it is with an April day when the sun is out and the wind is still. You're 1 month on in the middle of May, but if you so much as dare to speak, a cloud comes over the sunlit arch. A wind comes off a frozen peak, and you're 2 months back in the middle of March.